Well, following Senator Boswell and Senator MacDonald is always good fun. Listening to the claptrap that goes on in relation to their position, trying to argue points that have got no scientific basis, that have got no basis in facts, is always pretty easy, I must say. It's always pretty easy. Senator MacDonald talks about realism and truth. Well, that's something I haven't heard from the coalition since I've been in this place. They are not realistic about what's happening to the climate. They are not realistic about what's happening to our oceans. They are not realistic about the need to take steps to protect our ocean the same way as we protect forests, the same way as we protect our biodiversity. There is no realism, absolutely no realism from the coalition. And when it comes to truth, then I think the truth and you guys are big strangers, because you continue to argue, and you know that this is the position that the extremists in the coalition have got control. The extremists in the coalition are arguing that there is no climate change, that we should just ignore what's happening, ignore what the scientists tell us. Just don't worry that the scientific community around the world says there is grave danger.
On my left, order.
That there is grave danger from global warming and climate change. They just ignore it, and they go for the bottom line. Low shots, no long-term vision for this country. Absolutely none. So don't come here, talking to us about realism and truth. And the Pew Foundation and Greenpeace are going to close down Australia. I mean, give us a break. How about getting some realism that you talk about into the claptrap that comes from you lot over there? I mean, the Pew Foundation, the Sun Oil Company set up the Pew Foundation. Not exactly the Red Guards. The Sun Oil Company set it up. And the Sun Oil Company took the view that they had to protect the environment. And what do they say? They say that they actually base their analysis on facts, not like the coalition, as we've seen from Senator Boswell and Senator MacDonald. You run fear campaigns on every issue. If there's an issue or there's a policy, out comes the coalition fear campaign. A fear campaign on the pricing of carbon. Who cares about what this is going to do to future generations? Just run the fear campaign. Run the fear campaign, run the opposition position, run the big no. On refugees, again, the fear campaign comes out the back pocket. Simply, fear is what the coalition run on. On the economy, the fear campaign. We've got the most robust economy in the world, and yet they run a fear campaign. Now, I always like reminding the coalition. About Sir Robert Menzies and what he said on the 24th of July 1942. And he was talking about his liberal creed, something I don't think too many across there know much about. And I know that there are some who think they are experts on the history of the coalition. But this is what Robert Menzies said on the 24th of July 1942. He says, "Nothing could be worse for democracy than to adopt the practice of permitting knowledge to be overthrown by ignorance." Well, we've seen the example of ignorance trying to overthrow knowledge from Senator MacDonald. Well, he's in the LNP. I'm not sure what that means, whether he's in the Liberal Party or not, but he's been using ignorance. Senator Boswell, ignorance in terms of the facts. And then Sir Robert Menzies went on to say, "Fear can never be a proper or useful ingredient in those mutual relations of respect and goodwill which ought to exist between the elector and the elected." Well, you are the elected and you use fear continually to drive an ideological position in support of the rich and powerful in this country. And he went on to say, and so we think about it, and so as we think about it, we shall find more and more how disfiguring a thing fear is in our own political and social life. well, it's pretty disfiguring when you watch it in action from the coalition. Don't worry about the scientists. Don't worry about the facts. Just go with the fear campaign. And he went on to say, it is the fear of knowledge which prevents so many of us from really using our minds and which makes so many of us ready slaves to cheap and silly slogans and catch cries. Well, we heard the cheap and silly slogans from Senator Boswell and Senator MacDonald. We heard the catch cries from Senator Boswell and Senator MacDonald. And they were pretty silly, pretty cheap. They were just not substantive at all. And he goes on to say that, if, in brief, Australian liberalism must present itself as the party of action and the party of the future. We are not the anti-party, but the pro-party. Well, tell that to your leader. Tell that to your leader. Tell that to the people that are in there saying no on every issue. Tell that to the people that are out there on the fear campaigns. Well, I can tell you someone that has actually, I think, picked up a bit of that creed. A bit of that
Senator
creed.
Cameron, order, Senator Cameron. You're just starting to stray away from the substance of the motion before the chair. So I just draw your attention back to the motion.
I thought it was bang on, Mr. Deputy President. Bang on.
Senator Cameron, I'll just draw your attention to the motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Deputy President. You know, and when you have coalition MPs standing up using fear in the debate, you're entitled to deal with it, in my view. But I accept what you've said. Now, I just want to come to someone who must have understood what Robert Menzies was saying, and that's Peter Lindsay, the former Liberal MP for Herbert. I'm sure you all know the Honourable Peter Lindsay. He was a member for Herbert from 1993 to 2007. He was the Parliamentary Secretary for Defence, and for the Parliamentary Secretary to the Defence Minister. He was the Deputy Speaker, and he was a councillor in Townsville City Council for 11 years. So I think he knows a little bit about what's happening up in the north of this country. And he says, and he wrote an article in the Courier Mail on the 29th of May, and he said, and he's talking about the establishment of the Coral Sea National Park. He says, this singular act would be a fitting addition to Australia's long history of setting aside national parks to safeguard our natural wonders and unique wildlife. He goes on to say there's been an enormous show of support, including school children, recreational fishers, divers and tourism businesses. More than 300 marine scientists from 21 countries have endorsed the need for a stronger plan. So that Senator MacDonald would know the Honourable Peter Lindsay well. This is what he says. So he is actually dealing with the reality, not the nonsense that we've seen from Senator Boswell. The Labour government is determined to look after our oceans. We're determined to look after our environment. And you hear about the lockout of recreational fishermen. And Senator Boswell talks about this is an attack on blue-collar workers. Well, I don't know too many blue-collar workers that would be putting their little tinny, with a 5-horsepower motor on the back, in at Bundaberg, and heading out 492 kilometres to find the first national marine park. 492 kilometres. Let me tell you what this is about. This is about protecting the big end of town. It's about the big luxury cruisers going out there with their multi-millionaires and their billionaires and the marlin fishers getting out there into these proposed marine parks. So nobody should be under any illusion what it's about. It's typical Liberal and coalition policy. Look after the big end of town. I mean, the little dinghies are not getting pushed out from cairns to go 210 kilometres before you find a marine park. 210 kilometres. The boilermaker finishing work in the workshops, not going home and saying to the wife and kids, let's go out, at the weekend and do a bit of fishing, and we'll head out to this marine park and we'll go 492 kilometres in the tinny. Give us a break. It's a load of nonsense. It's an absolute load of nonsense that these people are going on with. They are anti-scientific. They are environmental vandals. They are economic incompetents, and they have the cheek to stand up here and talk to us about protecting the environment. You are an absolute disgrace when it comes to the environment. John Howard knew what had to be done. He was prepared to do it, and he's knocked that whole policy position off. You should get on with this and look after our environment.